Three women talking about politics?
If democracy had a group chat, this would be it. Welcome to Organizing Chaos with Roots to Results, where we'll unpack the chaos that is politics and give you the tools you need to do something about it. All in 20 minutes or less. Why 20 minutes? Because nobody's got time for anything else. I'm Meg Simons, Creative Director with Roots to Results, and I'm here with my amazing Roots to Results co-founders, organizers, and all-around political badasses, Laura Miranda Brown.
Hey.
And Sarah Virgo.
Hi.
Send a care package to the organizers in your life because it's Supreme Court decision season. That means every few days we will all start our mornings by staring anxiously at SCOTUS blog, waiting for reporters to live tweet whether we have rights or not. Or as we head into the marathon of decisions, we want to take some time to talk about how the Supreme Court impacts our lives, how it's changed under the Trump administration, and what cases we're watching this season. And to do all of that, we've brought on our friend Rachel Sklar. She's a recovering lawyer and well-respected writer who's written extensively about the courts. She's the co-founder of The List, which she sold in 2020, and most recently the founder of the Smart Friends Network. And her new podcast, Hi Smart Friend, is launching soon. Rachel, welcome to Organizing Chaos.
Thank you so much for having me. What a thrill to be here.
We're so happy you could be with us. So, Rach, you have to tell us a little bit more about yourself because I frankly started to write your bio and everyone was like, Laura, you've got to cut this. This is too long. And then I'm going to ask you what got you interested in the courts.
I am a recovering lawyer. I moved to New York straight from law school in 1998 to work at White & Case, a big law firm. I went to Stockholm to their office, and you know what? That was like enough law for me. I left law shortly thereafter to be a writer, but I retained my love of law, my love of having rights and justice. I grew up in Canada, so I was educated at the University of Toronto Law. I took the bar here. So I'm always interested in sort of like the juxtaposition of my sort of like it's a little bit less super freedom based in Canada. There's a little bit more balancing. There's something called like a principle called peace, order, and good government that is like a fairly bedrock principle, which I always find interesting. Imagining it introduced here.
Yeah, how do we get that import? I would like more maple syrup and that.
Really, I mean, particularly in Second Amendment cases, I think about it all the time. Just because there's a real thumb on the scale for liberty here, but as always, the question of whose liberty matters. Can't wait to talk about it all.
I love that you managed to hit just like 12 of my rage triggers all in your introduction. So this is just going to be a great, I'm going to be at about 14 this entire episode.
Yeah, Rachel, meet your soulmate here. This is...
I'm so ready.
I'm so excited because what our podcast listeners may or may not know is that Rachel Sklar, in addition to being all of these amazing things, is also a musical theater lyricist. She writes the actual words that people sing in musicals. So when you say, Sarah, that Rachel has met her soulmate, they're like at their core, essentially the same human, which I love so much.
Yeah.
I really excelled in law school the most in Law Follies. I have like a deep sheaf of songs from Law Follies, which I'm sure all your listeners would love to not hear immediately. So that's that.
Okay,
this
but
feels
I need
like an
the full
opportunity.
album.
This seems like an opportunity to have a live podcast episode where Sarah's not allowed to art direct it. We're going to actually have sets. We can't just have straight chairs on the table and like her fantasy.
I'm busy. I can't be there. I also don't know what we're talking about, so that's fun.
First of all, it's going to be great. I'm like envisioning. It's going to be fantastic.
I've got a table in the garage and 3 chairs. That's it. That's all we need. We're fine. So for people who don't think about the courts every single day like you two do, can someone just remind us why the Supreme Court matters and why we should be thinking about it as we head into midterms?
I think the Supreme Court is now pretty much established as mattering. unfortunately, in all the wrong ways in the past few years, particularly. But I've been covering media for quite some time, and I remember distinctly in the 2008 election, just not being able to get anybody interested in the Supreme Court. And I remember I actually did an interview with Jeffrey Toobin, who was at that time at the New Yorker and CNN and was like the leading expert on the Supreme Court pre other headlines regarding Jeff Toobin. And I remember the headline was like, under McCain, a McCain court could gut Roe within a year, right? So that was my headline. And that was 2008. And it just, people were not concerned. People were not worried. People felt that the court was like removed from the actual decision of voting. And in some respects, it was, in the sense, because there was a sense that the justices were constrained by precedent and were constrained by having a balance on the court. You know, maybe there was like a little bit of a lean left or a little bit of a lean right. But once a judge ascended to the court, they'd gone through a confirmation process. If there was someone who did not, pass muster, someone about whom there were concerns, irregularities, in the past, there was redress for that. There was, Congress actually acted in terms of they voted their conscience, and where there was a nominee, Robert Bork, who was not deemed to be an acceptable Supreme Court justice, they were not confirmed, AKA borked. Right?
Rachel, you could have ended that sentence at like, Congress would do something, period.
Yeah, they're not really into that anymore.
I mean,
No.
it is
It's
how
not their thing.
felt. It's how it felt. And so the court was low down on list. Like, I covered 2008, so the burning issues were not the court, and there were hardly any questions about the court in the debates. Like, it was hard for me to be able to talk about it because it was perfunctory, the concern. It wasn't even a discussion really when in the first campaign between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton obviously mentioned it. Hillary Clinton obviously was aware. Even when Scalia passed in February 2016, right? I mean, that was sort of like a dawning oh fuck moment, because it was just like nobody could believe that McConnell would dare hold up the process of allowing a president a rightful nomination. It was a solid 10 months before the election, and that is how it works, until recently. Actually, well, there really isn't, because I was going to say there's not a calendar of like when you're not allowed to to appoint a judge, and any sort of logic about not doing it in an election season went out the window when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away in late September. I think it was September 29th. What was it? Of 2020, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The PTSD flashbacks. And then Amy Coney Barrett was in like a breathtaking month later.
Yeah.
And completely irregular, right? And so it was the third irregular appointment under Trump, right? So Gorsuch was appointed as soon as Trump got into Scalia's seat, which was already the process was not normal.
Right.
And then Kavanaugh, in a completely new way, that process was not normal because of who was and was not allowed to give testimony and the abbreviated, FBI investigation. And then Amy Coney Barrett, who in an entirely new way was irregular and abnormal. So it like three separate Supreme Court justices have been confirmed under Trump, and each of the confirmation processes have had like pretty serious procedural irregularities around them that in a normal world would have been enough. Okay, had they been Democrats, then
That's a good catch. Good catch.
Stopped.
Yeah.
Good catch.
I can't stop thinking about 2016 when Trump looked directly at a camera and said he's going to appoint judges that will overturn Roe v. Wade. And I was like, okay, finally, people have to stop telling me I'm overreacting. And everyone was like, oh, they won't really do that. He said it on national television. What else do you need? Like, what else do I need to hire a skywriter? Like, what else do you need to know that they're really coming for Roe? And everyone kind of blew it off anyway. And here we are, Roe-less.
Plausible deniability has really helped Donald Trump over the years, but particularly in 2016, because he would just spout so many things that he couldn't do, right? And we all knew he couldn't do it because we knew there were processes. We knew that there were checks and balances. We knew there were 3 co-equal branches of government. So Donald Trump could say what he wanted about the type of judges that he would appoint and what he wanted them to do. But they were, at that point, constrained by settled law and by precedent, and you can't just go to the bench and decide you don't like a law. Again, in theory, obviously in practice, we've seen that's been very different. But also there was a confirmation process whereby these justices would have their judicial philosophies, the tires kicked on them, and they'd have to answer for them, and they'd have to not perjure themselves and say that they would respect precedent and respect the law of the land. So there were a bunch of different layers between Donald Trump saying something and it actually happening. And what the difference between 2016 and now is that the current court has shortened that to practically nothing. And that is why it is so alarming that this is the court, not only the court that exists right now, but that this is the court that Donald Trump could potentially be appointing new justices onto for, 40-year terms. And it could be more than one judge.
In 2008, but really in 2016, when Trump, as you said, looked into the camera and said, I will appoint justices who will overturn Roe. I remember talking to attorneys, and the attorneys said to me, women, it can't happen. It's settled law. It's not a problem. He can say whatever he wants. And I remember arguing and saying, it's not the law. There's no law that protects us, and we still don't have the fucking ERA. So without that, and without an actual federal constitutional right to an abortion, one fucking case is not enough for us to hang our hats on. Like, I felt like I was taking crazy pills. The lessons that I am taking away and that I'm hoping other people take away is that we can't be so sure that nothing will change because things didn't change. And the reverse of that is, from an organizing point of view, anything can change if you really want it to, right? If you can get yourself organized enough. There are both sides, right? And I share this because I feel like there's this like weird tension at the moment on the ground of like, we really want change. We really want Donald Trump gone, but we don't think we can do it because everything's stacked against us. There's this like mindset. And I wonder if there's something we can pull from like the courts and what we've learned to remind ourselves that like things change fast. Rachel, you've just shown us things change really fast under the first Trump and now the second Trump administration for our legal rights. And how fast can we flip it going the other direction? Like, what would it take for us to do that?
My first official job in courts was in 2012, and it wasn't looking at the Supreme Court. I was actually tracking spending on state Supreme Court races. Like, that's where I first realized kind of like, oh, they're coming for our rights. That's the piece people miss about what happened with Roe and about just kind of like everything that's happening with the courts right now, how it feels like they're coming for everything and it feels like there's no way to stop them. And it's because this didn't start with Trump. This started so far back. This has been an organized and concerted effort by like the ultra conservative, not even the conservative movement, the ultra conservative movement for decades. They started this, they beta tested it by looking at state Supreme Court elections, putting these people in, seeing what they could get passed at the state, and then once you have somebody at that state level, you're then building the bench of people you can put on the federal district courts. And then once you've got them on the federal district courts, that's the pool of people you pull from for circuit courts. And then that's the pool of people you pull for. That's a tongue twister. That is the pool of people you pull from for the Supreme Court. I think everyone is looking for, like, how do we fix this? We have to fix it immediately. And I need everyone to just kind of like take a Xanax, buckle in, because like we're in this for the long haul.
I mean, it is a very depressing thing to talk about building legal infrastructure in 2026. When you look at what Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society have been doing for decades. Okay, so just I've said that I'm Canadian. I don't ever use we when I talk about what the official USA does. I'm here as a supporter. I'm a supporter. But, I return to the notion of procedural irregularities in the 3 Supreme Court justice appointments under Trump so far. And I don't see why Congress, taking their role seriously, shouldn't examine that procedure and go to those votes and see if there is any redress. And I'm gonna just leave it at that. You can fill in.
Oh, I'm gonna ask Meg this question from one American to another. Is the process for removing a Supreme Court justice called impeachment?
It is, and there have been Supreme Court justices impeached before.
And I'm sorry, just to like really, as a follow-up question, like, if somebody were confirmed under unusual circumstances that didn't follow standard procedure, is that like the redress? Is the redress, sorry, you can't have this job anymore because you actually like didn't pass the job criteria?
Unfortunately, this might become a series of ping pong because I am not a lawyer. I just have a weird obsession with the courts. So I'm not positive I can give you a straight answer on that one, but I will say, yeah, that it's worth looking into.
Yeah, we're going to look it up. I'm delighted with this answer.
Speaking of like, what can Congress do? We need Congress to get serious about Supreme Court reform. Like, everyone has a different thought about like what reforms they think would work for the Supreme Court, but like, let's shake some things up. Let's change some numbers. Let's put in term limits. Like, let's get serious about making the Supreme Court more responsible and more responsive to the people. I think like that is like, if Obama's big thing was healthcare, I would love to see the next president's big thing be let's fix the courts, right? Because we're seeing right now what happens when we lose the courts. We're seeing we lose the things we thought we lose the things we thought were settled law. When we do pass things, they get overturned or they get like picked at. Like, this is something that we have to fix in order to fix anything else. Trying to focus on other things without focusing on the courts is like trying to build a house on sand. You can do it, but I don't know how long it's going to last.
I think importantly, too, is that one thing that has been lost is a degree of certainty, right? Because there's no question that the country has been far less stable in the wake of some of these surprising Supreme Court judgments that stem from granting the president sort of a near unlimited spate of powers, right? So even with to pulling in tariffs at the last minute, just the fact that it lasted so long, which made other countries skittish about doing business and sort of like tanked the economy, and I mean, things are much more stable than anybody had any right to sort of think they would be in terms of the economy. Sometimes it's bewildering. I don't understand.
Can we timestamp this just in case we don't have an economy by the time we actually get this out? Okay. We're recording this on April 17th. So if the entire U.S. economy has collapsed by the time this comes out, like just a footnote.
But I think that, where you should be able to have a reasonable sense of not just what kind of decision will come down, but why, right? And it's, first of all, so many decisions have been made through the shadow docket. The shadow
That's
docket
right.
is a shocking thing that shouldn't exist. There should be some accountability. There should be some
Yeah.
rationale.
So, for people who aren't giant nerds like us, can you explain what the shadow docket is?
Sure, the shadow docket is basically decisions that come down that are unsigned and there's no rationale provided. So you're like, wait, what? How did that happen? And it's just being used so much more. It all comes back to a lack of accountability and a choice to not have accountability.
Ooh, you know what that sound means? We are out of time. I mean, come on. You didn't really think I was going to be able to stick to 20 minutes in a Supreme Court episode, did you? You absolutely have to head to our social media channels to check out the rest of our conversation with Rachel. Trust me when I say it is worth it. You can find the rest of the conversation at @OrganizingChaosPod. A huge thank you to Rachel for joining us for this conversation, and make sure you check out her new podcast, Hi Smart Friend, wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, go outside, touch grass, vote the courts, and remember, the group chat is only part of the movement. We'll see you next time. Bye!